It's been great to be back. I think and everyone in the squad had massive smiles that first day, especially. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just a semblance of some kind of normalcy for all of them, right? So it can't be replaced, really. You know, you can't replicate it. You can't just guys being out on the field, getting sun on your skin and running around, getting that fresh air, kicking balls around. Yeah, I mean, it's been a huge boost. With that said, there's still a lot of work to be done.
Tell us about that work that needs to be done now until the start of the league.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we've never been in a circumstance like this before where we stop for this prolonged period of time. A lot of guys' bodies are going to have to readapt. And the coaching staff especially has a tough job in hand to ensure that not only do their fitness levels go back up, but that injuries are managed. Because, you know, as with any high performance athlete, when you stop for a long time, you know, your muscles start to react differently and perform and behave differently as to how they would have been before the break. So ramping that work back up, but doing it in a way where we're not getting guys injured, especially soft tissue injuries, you know, hamstring, groins, quads, things like that. Obviously, you will always want to avoid the big ones, but these little ones are really the concern, that in a shortened season, if one of them pops up, that player's probably gone for the entire period of this shortened league season.
Now, these are some of the issues that you're dealing with now are somewhat similar or closer to the kinds of problems that you were dealing with on a regular season in terms of players' fitness and getting them ready for a season. But for the previous 6 months, it's been a lot of uncertainty, a lot of we don't know what's going to happen. What was that experience like? What were the problems and issues that you had to deal with personally as a general manager, having a club and managing a club and knowing that we weren't sure if there was going to be a season or not?
It's definitely been the most challenging 6 months of my time in this position at Kaya. You know, normally you're dealing with one or two things, especially at the time of the year. You know, if performance levels of the team are down, then how do you correct that? You know, performance levels dipping also means motivation levels of the players dipping, so then you have to manage that as well. In this case, it was everything, right? So everyone's curious, hey, when do you think we can get back? And you can't provide an answer. And then the longer it drags on, everyone's motivation levels just begin to drop, right? You know, we try and find unique and novel things to do in the Zoom training. And, you know, at some point now they were meeting up to do road work in small groups. You know, these are all great, but it only lasts 2-3 weeks, right? After that, it just becomes a grind again, and then the questions come back to, when can we get back on the field, right? So now it's a bit interesting in the sense that we're back on the field, and now the questions are, hey, when can we train with contact? Or, you know, when can we have a small-sided game? Or little things like this. But at least it's progressing in the right direction. So there's light at the end of the tunnel in the sense that we're back on the field, and it seems and it feels like, you know, that start of the league is coming sooner. Off the field stuff was obviously very, very challenging. You know, all businesses suffered. LBC, our main backer, obviously took a big hit, and you know that really did affect budgets and projections and plans. You know, not just to survive this year, but also having to readjust for next year, going back to a more modest budget and setup, which we're still extremely grateful for, and we're extremely lucky that we had them as our backer to help us through this difficult period. But you know, a lot of difficult conversations with everyone at the club, top to bottom, from the owners all the way down to the players and everyone in the staff. You know, to understand that this is the reality that we're in, and you know, you can accept it or you can go find a solution or a situation that would suit you better, because we cannot force anyone to stick around in a situation where maybe it doesn't make sense for their family and their livelihood.
How have you found that the squad has reacted to this type of situation and the circumstances that we're in? Obviously, the squad is not completely the same as it was 6 months ago.
I think I got to give a lot of credit to everyone in the club, players and staff. Everyone understood the situation. obviously at the beginning, people were thinking, oh, maybe it will just last a month, maybe 2 months, right? And then it starts to drag on and longer and longer. And so, but we're lucky, we're blessed that we have a really good group of people here and a good group of players as well, that we're able to stick together and really just focus on looking after themselves and waiting for that opportunity to get back on the field.
Survival has been the name of the game over the last 6 months for a lot of the clubs, and not everyone, unfortunately, has been able to make it over the line. We're going to be facing some new clubs. If the season pushes through in a couple months or in a month's time, what do you think about the development of new cast members, so to speak, in the PFL?
Well, I think just to touch on your first point there, it goes back to we're really lucky, to have Santi as an owner who really loves football, and the other owners as well of Kaya, Hagedorn brothers and Mike. These are all guys that love the sport of football, and so we're extremely lucky that we were in that position where they would continue to support us, even though things had to be reduced or cut down, whatever it might be. We still exist as a club, and we survived, and now, despite the challenges, we can plan for a future still, right? And that continues with the goal of really helping Philippine football as a whole. As far as the new clubs coming in, I think it's great. I would hope that, this time, I know with conversations with different people in the federation and different people in the league, it's a reset, right? A lot of people are in that mindset of, we need to rethink things over. Whatever it might have been in the past, inefficiencies, efficiencies, these things. But now it's a lot more of, how do we not only have a better league, but it's also how do we get more clubs involved, right? And so I think, ADT being one of the new clubs, it's a great setup, It gives opportunity to new players. They get to be exposed into the Philippine club football scene. These players, I'm sure, are extremely hungry to prove themselves, to show what it is they've got. A lot of them, not all, but a fair amount of them have been plying their trade at youth levels or professional levels in different countries. So now they're here, and they have the eyes of the entire national team and the fan base of football on them to see what's this kid about, who's the next big name that's about to come out. So that's exciting. Maharlika is obviously a club that formed very, very quickly, and got to give credit to Anton for pulling that off in such a short amount of time. They have a slightly different setup in that, they have a mix of experienced players and youth players, which I think also is a unique and interesting setup that they're going to try and build and focus on. Despite them being a new club and being formed so quickly, I still fully expect them to be extremely competitive. These guys that they've named and brought in, they're all known as tough competitors. These are guys that hate to lose, want to win every game, are not going to settle for just being there, right? And that's what you want. You want a league where everyone wants to compete. Everyone understands that maybe you're not at the same financial level as other clubs, but that doesn't deter clubs from being competitive and wanting to take down those bigger clubs, right? And that's what you want. You don't want clubs that are just happy to show up and play a game, and whatever the result is the result, and then go home and let it be. You want guys that have the passion for it, and players that are there hungry to prove themselves, to get onto a bigger club or move on to a different league. These types of situations.
Of course, there's UCFC as well. That's popped up. An
Yes.
old rival repackaged. in a different-
Yeah. Sorry, missed out on that one. Squad is almost 85% the same, right? So extremely competitive lineup. Very experienced. They've already played more games than any other club in this league right now. So maybe they have a slight advantage or head start. They too are going to want to have to rewrite their history, right? Because they're starting from scratch. And so for sure they're going to want to win their first title in their first year. So, even if that doesn't continue on to like the streak, because it's a new club, but it's still a new proving point for them, right? It's still for them their title to lose. At least that's the way I'm gauging it based on the messages and conversations I'm having with a few of the players and staff on that club.
UCFC, the second representative in the AFC Cup, which we just received news a couple of days ago, is that the tournament has been cancelled. They've been trying to put it together to push it through sometime this year, but it seems the logistical nightmare was just a little bit too much. And tell us a little bit about that development and how it affects the club and your thoughts on the situation.
Very disappointing news, obviously. That was a big carrot dangling there, motivation-wise especially, for the players to look forward to come back, compete at the AFC level. Obviously, you're only going to be guaranteed 3 more matches, but regardless, those are games that every player gets up for, right? And it was really exciting, the new format that they had presented, because it was going to be centralized in one host nation. So it was kind of like a mini tournament in that sense, right? And the other good thing about that is normally when you travel for an AFC Cup game, you're selecting your 18 players that are going to dress on match day. And those are the only players that usually travel. Once in a while you bring 1 or 2 extras because of injuries or here. But in this format, you're going to be bringing everyone, right? And that was really exciting for us in the management and the coaching staff, because originally it was going to be scheduled the first round of matches on the 23rd of September, which is actually really soon, which would have happened ahead of the league start, right? The local league. So it was going to be very challenging to be competitive against some of those other clubs in that group, where Myanmar especially is already playing league games, right? The other 2 are in a similar boat as us. Singapore maybe slightly ahead. But, it's also a nice feeling to go in there with nothing to lose, competing with nothing to lose. And then in the background, as we were planning it, it was like, this would have been a preseason away. Have a nice preseason, get the group all together, separated from the usual distractions or heavy feelings of the pandemic and all of these things, in a different environment where they could train daily, hang around each other, start to build bonds, and really strengthen the unity and the bond in the group of the club. But yeah, AFC Cup is different, right? So there's a lot of logistical challenges there. You're not only talking about the ASEAN zone, you're talking about the South zone, you're talking about the East zone, you're talking about the Central zone and the West zone of Asia. And getting all of those to coincide and finish out the tournament, I believe, was just too difficult for AFC, especially with each country having its own challenges with the pandemic. And thus, they had to cancel it. So, bit of a reset, but I guess now the motivation for the players and the coaching staff is we just want to get back on the field anyway, whether it's the AFC or the PFL, whatever it might be. We just want to play games. So
what does that mean in terms of this year's AFC Cup? Everything is canceled. All the results are scratched off. I don't know, yellow cards, anything that you've picked up during this campaign, is it wiped off?
There are still questions to be answered. To be honest, the clubs have not been written to personally yet. We'll maybe receive that letter next week, as the press conference or the executive meeting was on Thursday. So we're hoping that those questions are answered. If not, they will be asked. My understanding is when a tournament is force majeure, it's like it never happened, right? So I don't know if that's exactly the case, how it's going to be. So suspensions and all of these things, we don't really know. But the expectation is that your local league this year, your performance and your standing will then determine again who participates next year.
Right. We're in a different setting than we were last week. We've been training at the Carmona PFF National Training Center in Carmona, Cavite. Today we find ourselves on the blue pitch here in Circuit Makati. Tell us a little bit about how we found our way here and the importance of perhaps having this training venue available for Kaya.
Basically, during ECQ, maybe a few weeks before it was scheduled to go back, or it was announced to go back to MECQ. Actually, when we were in MECQ, before it went into ECQ and then ECQ to MECQ again, Yes, a bit confusing. So I had to run it back in my head. We had already been in talks with Circuit Makati management. They were the ones most interested to reopen the soonest. So, we had advanced talks with them and we were just waiting for news. Obviously, when we went to GCQ, those conversations happened really quickly, but then in 2 weeks' time, we reverted backwards, so we had to wait again. Through the help of the PFL and Circuit Makati management, who had received the health and safety protocols ahead of time that the joint administrative order had set aside for football, with the advice of GAB and PFL, had already planned for this and started to put all the measures in place at the field. It's massive for us. Carmona is a fantastic facility, especially with the new developments there, the 2 smaller fields and everything. It's great, it really is. However, logistically, it's not ideal for the setup of our club because we're not based in Cavite or Laguna or even Alabang, which is a bit near, Travel was a bit taxing. And, these players in the heat, 2 hours and then back into a van, it's not ideal for your body and recovery to then expect the next day perform again and the next day over and over and over. Also financially, with everything that's going on in the club, having to be extremely tight with its finances, the expenses to train there are actually a lot higher than it would be to train here in the Circuit Makati pitch. So it's a massive boost for the club, logistically, and even just physically for the players.
So the focus now is just to prepare physically and tactically, I suppose, eventually for the start of the league. Is that correct?
Yes, 100%. That's correct. Slowly ramping up as GAB and IATF begin to loosen what players can do in training. If the groups can get bigger or contact is allowed, even light contact, it will ramp up the activity level of the players, which will then sharpen that match fitness, even though no matches are being played yet.
How do you feel about Kaya's chances this year?
I feel good. I'm confident in my club. I'm confident in my players. I'm confident in my coaching staff. With that said, I think this year is a really tricky one and a really interesting one, I think, for football fans and everyone, because I believe, and this is solely my opinion, that the competition will be a lot more open. With 2 rounds to be played amongst 6 clubs, you slip up 1 or 2 games, it changes everything. But that also means that the other clubs, all of them, Stallions is always competitive. Mendiola is proved to be very competitive last year. I'm expecting, as I already said, Maharlika to be a very competitive squad. ADT the same. That points can be taken from anyone at any point in time in this condensed 2-month, roughly, competition, right? So anything can really happen. That's my firm belief. Like, anyone can take it. Will I back Kaya? Of course I'm going to back Kaya.